What is up, Los Angeles, and welcome back to your Rams LAFB show. We've got news. Free agency is in full swing. The Rams
they're
have
swinging.
re-signed. They are. Listen, Les Snead said some stuff the other day, and he was not effing around.
Ooh, good one. I saw what you did there.
Yeah.
He's not effing around, guys. Yeah. I mean, listen. They're primed, they're ready. They're not taking their foot off the gas. Did you see what Jay Glazer said yesterday? I reposted it on my Twitter.
I didn't see that. What did he say?
Well, he said he had been with McVay over the weekend. And a buddy of mine confirmed that because he was like, oh, I saw McVay at this place. He was with Jay Glazer. I'm like, oh my gosh, to be a fly on the wall and hear like what they were talking about. But Jay kind of let us in on what the conversation was, that he was privy to the McDuffie sign, that McVay is over the moon with it, and that he's actually surprised more teams don't adopt to the Rams style of how they do free agency. Because the draft picks, everyone's like, oh, first round draft pick, it's so valuable. Okay, is it though? When we have a proven commodity in a free agent guy, let's say like McDuffie, you know what you're getting from him. Whereas, you could burn a first round pick and kind of be like, that didn't work out so well. So why would they not? And that's just to lend what Les Snead said. They want to pencil in a first starting string solid team and then backfill it with draft guys. I see that as a smart strategy, but how do you feel about it?
Well, let's talk about the news right off the bat.
Let's do it. Sorry.
We got a lot to talk about and not a lot of time to do it.
Right.
So the Rams re-signed Tyler Higbee yesterday. That news came out. 2 years, $8 million is the figures that are associated with that deal. And then this morning, Kam Curl, it was reported that he has signed a much larger deal, 3 years, $36 million. So quite the upgrade from his $4.5 million contract that he signed, that he made last year. So, so many takeaways from this. I was on the record several times saying, I don't think they can afford this guy. Also on the record saying, yeah, I think they should probably go get Tyler Higbee if he wants to play. There was rumors of his perhaps retirement. And my biggest takeaway from this is 2026 is the year. They have Stafford coming back. They've got a lot of pieces in place. Obviously, they made it to the NFC Championship game. They want to get over that hump, and they are going all in on that. They are more in than ever before since going back to 2021, I would say. So, I mean, that's my first big takeaway. What other kind of initial thoughts do you have on this before we get into more specifics?
Well, I think the thing we always hit, which is how do you contend and build for the future? And I think a show we're still going to do, we need to do, is how do all these numbers fit? What does this mean potentially with regards to, how this team can work? Because they still need to pay Puka. Now they have to pay McDuffie somewhere in the price tag of $30 million for his position next year. And I'm sure these guys are all making these decisions well in advance before we think about them. But there's a lot. It's very nuanced. It's super layered. I think the Tyler Higbee decision is interesting. But first, let's just, because I'm curious about it, 2 years, $4 million per year for Higbee. Do you think that makes sense for them? Obviously, he's had some injuries. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's exactly where I wanted them to be. I was thinking 1 year, $5 million, just because he has had some injuries. And then, 2027 is another ball of wax. So I think this is a great deal for the team. He is the leader in that room, of course. He is still the most complete tight end on the roster, with, Terrence Ferguson still developing. Colby Parkinson, his catching ability has improved, but he's not George Kittle. He's not Travis Kelce. So yeah, I think really smart. And then you got Davis Allen, coming off of his rookie contract next year. So, it lines them up nicely at the position. So I think that one's perfect sense. Veteran guy, been longest tenured guy now with Havenstein out the door. His locker room presence and just a reliable offensive piece that they know they can trust in high leverage situations.
So if you want to read between the tea leaves, now they're, I'm sure, certainly not going to look for a tight end in the draft. Obviously, I kind of thought that they wouldn't anyways. What does this indicate to you on how this offense will look?
Well, I think it means that 13 personnel is still on the table. Since they have a room full of guys that they like and they've invested big money in across the board. So, yeah, I think that's still going to be involved. I think that's probably the biggest thing.
That was what I was assuming you would say. But then also, I imagine, when I had Jimmy Graham on, he was really great at sort of dissecting the complications of what it takes to be a tight end and even being a Sean McVay tight end offense. I think they are wanting to set up the run. They have these big guys up front, maybe to block or confuse the defense. How I see it is, I think there's going to be much more of an emphasis on the run game. So then we want to talk about the run game. How does that look? And then you want to go another layer deeper than that. You bring in assistant head coach and Cliff Kingsbury. And I forget if it was somebody was saying it. Maybe, it was Nate Atkins who said it. You're not going to bring in a Cliff Kingsbury unless you really want to give him a role that he's going to want to take the job. So he's going to have his hands and identity and fingerprints all over this offense. That's what I'm always curious about is, what does this now say about the identity of the offense moving forward? You couple in the fact that, Stafford, there's no way you can replicate the offense that he had per what Nate Atkins said. Like, there's no way we're going to get the same potential production out of a Matthew Stafford, even though we're getting guys. I don't know. And then the other thing that I thought was interesting, which is what you tweeted out, this now first round pick, unless they do something with it, has to be offense. Is it a wide receiver? Is it going to be an offensive lineman? What do you think?
Well, I don't think it has to be offense necessarily. They still have work to do in the cornerback room for sure. They still have to add bodies there. So I'm still of the opinion that they're setting themselves up so that 13 can be sort of, I don't want to call it a luxury pick, but an highly impactful pick. After the big trade for Trent McDuffie, that significantly pulled away resources from the draft. So now, but they still have 13 picks or 3 picks in the top 100, first pick being 13. So, that this also allows them to trade back if they want to kind of bolster this class a bit. So, if 13 doesn't fall the way they want it to, I mean, they could end up with, pick 18 and add a 4th rounder or a 5th rounder or something like that, where they've done really good work. And to your point about the running backs, do they start to diversify the backfield more, by adding a high-end draft pick there or possibly a free agent, but
right. Yeah.
I don't want to get into that fully. But I think, sure. The other big question I want to talk about is, this money situation with Kam Curl. We've talked about all the defensive pieces that are coming up for contracts. Now Trent McDuffie is among those people. According to Nate Atkins, they're going to have a robust contract waiting for him after this season. He wants a big deal, and that was a part of the reason he joined the Rams. It was on that promise. So this money situation just gets more and more interesting. They're currently sitting at $27 million of cap space currently. That doesn't include.
I was going to say, did you update the doc?
I haven't, because we don't have the cap hit number for Curl or Higbee yet. But that's going to take a good chunk of that 27 million away. Even if they don't trade or move around in the draft or anything like that, now you're still looking at a 11 million dollar draft class. So that question, what that brings up is Matthew Stafford renegotiation. Is he going full Tom Brady? Is he going to take a really team friendly deal to open up more cap space, because they still have moves to make? Now free agency might look a bit different at this point. But in terms of planning for the future, my focus has really shifted into how are they going to make 2026 the year that is truly all in. Because with this reduced amount of draft capital, taking a quarterback now becomes, you kind of have to do it in the third round with pick 93.
Oh,
If you're gonna
right.
do it, because there's a big jump down to the sixth round. And I mean, you can,
so
sure, you can take a guy in the seventh round and maybe he's Brock Purdy, but anyway.
Right. Well, and this is the other part that's very interesting that you just brought up, and I'd like to key in on. So you're Matthew Stafford, you want to win the Super Bowl, and it plays into the conversation that we were just having, which is the rebuild. Like, think about how odd this is for a human being. Okay. Like, put yourselves in the brain or the mind of Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay's relationship. These guys are like brothers. They uniquely are almost the same age as a coach and a player, and both very competitive. And Stafford, let's just say, wants to go all in and knows in order for the Rams to go all in, they may need to have some financial sacrifices. They love him, though. They want him around for as long as he wants to play. But then the other thing you have to be mindful of is this guy potentially, I'm not suggesting it's true, will take a discount, and also at this discount will be raising the heir apparent. Think about how complex that dynamic is going to be this season when they draft a young guy, and they are not drafting a young guy to just hang out and kick the ball around. They are drafting a guy to hopefully be the one that can put and fill in the shoes of Matthew Stafford. I don't know how much ayahuasca you're going to need to do to go through what that makes in the way of a complicated relationship. And by the way, the Rams navigate it beautifully, because I think Matthew Stafford feels very valued there. I think he and McVay have a great relationship, but like, that's not your everyday complicated, working boss relationship. You know what I mean? So
nobody does selling better than Shopify. Shopify is the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret, with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts go abandoned and way more sales going through. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period for 3 months at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating, and regardless of what happens there with that contract and what happens in the draft, and they will need to add a quarterback on this team because Jimmy Garoppolo is a free agent. So technically they currently only have 2 quarterbacks under contract. So they will they're going to have to add a quarterback, and we'll see exactly what direction they decide to go with that. And talking about team building and talking about being aggressive for this year. I mean, now you kind of key in on a few few positions of need heading into free agency and later in the draft. Per Diana Rossini, they were exploring a trade for AJ Brown, and they've ultimately moved on from that. But wide receiver, that wide receiver 3/2 future position is very much on the table. Now, is that Mekhi Lemon at 13? Is that, where does that come into play? A lot of people like Alec Pierce, he's going to be very, very expensive. That cap conversation comes back up. Another spot is cornerback depth. Kind of talked about that. Now, Darius Williams and a $7.5 million cap hit. Are they able to release him? I don't know. I mean, I feel like Kobe Durant's coming back. That's a sense I'm getting from kind of what they're signaling. And then defensive line depth is still on the table. And I see that as probably their biggest free agency move right there, because there's all sorts of guys out there, from Demario Davis to Von Miller. I had Brock Vieira of Sports Illustrated on. He was talking about Jalen Phillips potentially coming and joining the team in free agency. So if they are going all in, those are the three that I'm looking at that are still, I wouldn't call them glaring weaknesses, I wouldn't call them glaring needs on the team,
Right.
but if you want to get over the hump,
look out.
Yeah. I would want more of those. And they gotta add cornerback depth, both in the draft, I think, and in free agency. But they gotta do it.
And offensive line.
Offensive line depth? Or do
yeah,
you think
they need to look at the offensive line. I mean, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
He signed Dedich, right? But I think that offensive line should be looked at in the draft, not in free agency.
Certainly for future consideration. Absolutely.
Yeah. And also just based on what we've seen in the past, it's not lost on us. 2 seasons ago, they had to do what is it? The carousel of, when you go around and you tap on people's heads and you run around.
What is that game called? Goose? Is it something
Duck,
about a goose? Duck, Duck, Goose. Yeah.
Goose. Is that even applicable in this? I don't think so, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I was actually thinking about it on my run this morning, which is where I do my best thinking.
Do you?
And what I was thinking about was the Seattle Seahawks lost Zach Charbonnet heading into the most important games, and their offense didn't fall apart. And, you think about how fragile the Rams roster was last season. You lose Quentin Lake, and that defense takes a huge step back. If they lose, Puka Nacua, when he went down, spurred a revolution in how they run their offense. They had to make a huge change, and it worked out great. But point being is, what happens if you lose Steve Avila or Kevin Dotson for a long time? Can they build in some contingencies in the roster to ensure, because they were remarkably healthy last season despite all the injuries they did have, one of the least injured teams in the league still, and it was so you kind of have to bolster that. So that's another consideration. And that's the bridging the gap between going in all in for this year and bridging the gap to the future. Is you got to have that. You got to have both, so definitely threading a needle there. So great point on offensive line. Certainly something you got to keep an eye on. But I think their focus, I think this says that their focus is 2026, and we'll see what happens after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But this is how great franchises can fall backwards, is, try to leverage too much on one season, and then they put themselves in a tough situation to bail out in the years to come, right? Think about how challenging it is to insulate a very real possibility of is it going to be, this is the last year we're going to have a Stafford playing the way he is, or do we think he can go one more year and then he hangs it up at 40? Again, also, we got to make sure, like, he didn't have back surgery this offseason. He's got an aggravated disc that, took him out during all of training camp. I don't know how back injuries work necessarily, but like in order for you to remove yourself from getting an aggravated disc, I think you just end up having to down the line get surgery. So it's not like this goes away unless you have measures in place to like reduce the inflammation. I'm not a doctor. My point is the very real possibility of how long do we really have Matthew Stafford? And then what does this team actually look like when Matthew Stafford is, retired or no longer playing with the Rams?
Yeah, and I think that situation is touch and go, and Les Snead mentioned that as well. They are looking at this as a year-to-year prospect, not just from I don't think it's just from a contract standpoint. I think that's just from the reality of the situation is, sometimes we've seen old quarterbacks, their arms just stop working.
Yeah.
You look at Peyton Manning, you look at Drew Brees, you look at Matt Ryan, guys like that, where it's just all of a sudden, they just can't play ball like they used to. So yeah. I mean,
that's right.
Matthew Stafford is the championship window. That has not changed. And I think they're looking at it, and you know what, this game is about winning Super Bowls.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's not about winning NFC championships games. It's not about going 13-4, it's this, like, so if you have a chance, if that's your window, going all in on it, I have no problem with that. And I think Kam Curl and Tyler Higbee, I think both of these signings prepare themselves to do that. So I think everything to me is evidence, data points on a graph, breadcrumbs on a trail. This is the way we're going, and these are two big breadcrumbs. Big old loaves of bread out there, just screaming. The 2026, we're giving a lot. We're going to throw a lot of resources at that. So
yeah,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say we got free agency officially opening. It's already going for the Rams, but officially opening on Monday. So plenty more to talk about, and we'll have stuff for you every step of the way until free agency kind of concludes.
I love it. Yep. Rams. What does this mean? This means, and by the way, just to put a little button on our Higbee, if you're Higbee, are you like, yeah, I'm going to retire this year? Yeah, right. Not this year. Like maybe, but he's like, no, I'll take the deal. I'll take the deal because this is going to be like a super fun year. And by the way, guys, it's going to be a super fun year because think about what the Rams even did last year. They took the whole team to Maui for minicamp, and they sacrificed some of the on-field sort of to have team bonding moments. And I think now more than ever, and they brought the families, and they don't normally do that with camp and stuff. So I think this year, watch out. There's going to be some interesting team bonding, team building, defiantly original ways to keep this team together and competitive at the same time. And, there's plenty more to come from Los Angeles.
Defiantly original. Did you just come up with that?
That's their ethos.
I love it. Okay. Well, that is all we've got for you today. We will, like I said, we'll be back with plenty more free agency content, giving all of our thoughts and predictions, and stay on the lookout for that. Like and subscribe. You know what to do. I keep getting these analytics from YouTube. We still have a ton of new viewers. So for those of you that have stuck around and think I'm repeating myself too much, it's because I know that a lot of new people are constantly coming to the show, which is great. Right. So appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.